Ever since modern humans became intelligent enough to learn not only how to hunt and search for food, but also to tame and conquer the land of Earth itself, they've been spreading out over the planet's surface. Literally every group of humans on the planet, regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion, has the desire to spread out, discover new lands for them and their clan, and in so doing, securing their genetic lineage. It's no secret that humans can and have been conquering and migrating to regions far outside of their areas of origin, most notably with Europeans, who have moved in large numbers to every region on the planet. However, other groups have been migrating to new regions as well. There's currently no evidence of settlements or former settlements of any kind on the continent of Antarctica from before European discovery. And honestly, it would be less surprising to find alien artifacts in the Antarctic than human ones. Antarctica is the only continent on the planet that does not have an indigenous population, and despite being larger than South America in land area, presently only 4,000 to 5,000 people are in Antarctica at the most. For the sake of this video, let's go ahead and pretend that Antarctica is just slightly less cold and inhospitable than it is in the real world. It would still be by far the coldest continent and mostly covered in ice, but in this scenario it would be far more tempting for settlement than it is now, being akin to maybe Greenland or Siberia rather than the surface of Mars. Here's a map of all of the civilizations that I think could have had potential for Antarctic exploration or colonization. And near the very south here in orange are the Khoisan, a very ancient peoples believed to be some of the first human beings on Earth and have been in the region of southern Africa for about 100,000 years. However, the climates of southern Africa and Antarctica are obviously very different, and the Khoisan are known for being great hunters and foragers, not so much for exploring the high seas. Next up, we've got the Australian Aborigines here in brown. Also a very ancient group believed to have been in Australia for up to 60,000 years. However, they aren't great swimmers, and it's believed they only got to the island from Papua New Guinea because a land bridge opened up between the two islands, and it actually took them about 20,000 years to reach Australia's most southern island, that is Tasmania. Now, the indigenous people of the very southern tip of South America here are known as Yaghan or Fuegian people, and they've been there for about 10,000 years, and they've already faced conditions very similar to that of modern-day Antarctica, with a very cold, harsh, and dry climate. They've been able to survive for the past thousands of years for a few reasons, some of which include coating their entire bodies in animal fat in order to insulate the heat, and also they've adapted to have a much higher metabolism than any other group of people on the planet. Now, the people of the Maldives, an island nation just south of India, are great swimmers and fishers since they do live on an island chain, and their ancestors are believed to have migrated from southern India about 2,400 years ago. The climate and temperature of the Maldives are obviously going to be very different than that of Antarctica, since the Maldives lies on a latitude at around the equator. Now, Bantu peoples such as the Xhosa and the Zulu didn't arrive in the territory of the modern-day country of South Africa until about 2,000 years ago. And could they have arrived at the continent of Antarctica? Well, it's entirely possible, seeing how Bantu sailors managed to reach the neighboring island of Madagascar about 1,000 years ago, but would they have adapted well to the climate? Probably not. Speaking of Madagascar, Austronesian settlers from the island of Borneo reached the island about 1,300 years ago. And if you think about it, from Borneo to Madagascar is an awfully long way to travel by boat, so it's entirely possible that they could have gone off course and reached the mainland of the continent of Antarctica instead. Now, you might be tempted to think that Europeans might be the first to get their mitts on the continent of Antarctica like they did in our timeline. However, Europeans really didn't start colonizing until about 1,100 years ago, starting with the Norse colonization of Greenland in North America. Greenland has a very similar climate and topography to Antarctica, so it's possible that an early Norse, Spanish, or Portuguese expedition could have landed in Antarctica and create a successful colony. However, knowing the fate of the Norse Greenlandic civilization, it's unknown how long such an Antarctic colonization could be a success. Now, last up are the Maori or Maori people of New Zealand, who actually didn't reach the island until about 800 years ago. The Maori are a part of a larger Polynesian group that populate a huge chunk of the Pacific, from as far north as Hawaii to as far south as Stewart Island in New Zealand. The Polynesian people are known as great seafarers, warriors, and fishers, so it's possible that an early Polynesian expedition could have reached the Antarctic coast within that 800 years. Keep in mind, all it takes is just one successful voyage to a new land to create an entirely new population in the future. However, also keep in mind early settlements in new lands would be incredibly fragile, with little to no contact with larger civilizations and having to be entirely self-sufficient. This would be especially true for any early Antarctic settlements, seeing how the nearest areas of major population would be thousands of miles away, and these settlers would be exposed to dangers and challenges never before faced by any early civilization in the history of the planet. Now, out of all the groups I mentioned during the previous segment, the group I think that would have had the most potential for populating Antarctica sometime in the past would definitely have been the Yaghan people. There's just no other group of people that could have adapted to Antarctica's extreme climate, and even claiming the Yaghan could have survived is a bit of a dubious claim, but if anyone could do it, they could. When they were first discovered, the Europeans were amazed that the Yaghan could survive the extremely frigid temperatures of the southern cone, especially considering they wore very little to no clothes even when hunting out in the open. Yaghan women were even able to dive in the 40-degree Fahrenheit waters around the island of Tierra del Fuego to collect shellfish. At that temperature, the average human would be dead in 30 minutes, yet the Yaghan had adapted and evolved to survive, so perhaps they could have adapted to Antarctica as well. By the time the first European settlers arrived at the Yaghan's homeland on the southern portion of the island of Tierra del Fuego, it's believed that they numbered around 3,000 people, giving them a population density of about 0.5 people per square mile. By extrapolating this density, by the time of European contact in the 1820s, Antarctica could have as many as 2 million people already living on the continent as an established indigenous group. I know this sounds unlikely, but again, in this world, every other factor on the planet is the same, except the climate of Antarctica is just a bit warmer and hospitable for human life. The native Antarcticans would no doubt have devolved into dozens or perhaps hundreds of different languages and ethnicities within the 10,000 years that they arrived on the continent. There's really no way to tell what they would look like. Human beings can change an awful lot in the span of 10,000 years, but they probably would have evolved to have pale skin or at least of lighter shade than current-day South Americans to maximize vitamin D intake through the sun, similar to modern-day Europeans. They also would have evolved to be rather short and squat in stature, since minimizing the surface area to volume ratio would be crucial to retaining body temperature in the extreme temperatures. What I am sure of is that if there was a native population of Antarctica, Europeans certainly would have found a way to colonize it. The native Antarcticans probably would have gained a very similar status to that of Australian Aborigines, who once numbered in the millions in Australia, but became a minority very quickly after European discovery due to various factors such as genocide, diseases, and the large waves of European immigrants that soon outnumbered them. The most likely group to have colonized the area first would have been one or perhaps all of these four powers: the UK, France, Spain, and Portugal, seeing how they were the dominant colonial powers of the world for 4 centuries. And it would only take a matter of decades for European migrants to start flooding into the continent if any natural resources such as fossil fuels, gold, or diamonds were discovered. So in the modern day, Antarctica's population would probably be in the same boat as Australia. Majority European with small pockets of Aborigines and mixed-race inhabitants scattered throughout the continent, with large groups of immigrants coming in from Africa, Asia, Polynesia, but most definitely South America, with the closest point from Chile to Antarctica being a relatively short distance of 600 miles. It might be united in one country, or there could be several. There's really no way to know. Alright everyone, please let me know your thoughts on this video and the topic down in the comments below. I know this was sort of an out there topic, and this is my first shot at an alternate history style video, so let me know if you'd like me to do more of it. This video is actually a lot of fun to make, even though the concept of an indigenous population in Antarctica would probably be impossible in our world. Thanks for watching, everyone. Always open to suggestions for future videos. This has been Mason, and I'll see you next time.